I had just lowered my father into the ground when my life fractured all over again. Standing at the graveside, trying to swallow my grief, I saw my wife of 11 years approach. I thought she had come to comfort me. Instead, she pressed an envelope into my palm and whispered, "It's over." Divorce papers, delivered right at my father's funeral. But what pierced me deeper than her betrayal was the message scrawled in bold print. "Your family fortune now belongs to me. Stay with me to discover what unfolded next. And please remember to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with those close to you. Your encouragement means everything." Now let's return to the story. My name is Jonathan Miller. I'm 43 years old. On the same day I buried my father, my wife of 11 years handed me divorce documents. It was a bleak autumn morning in Boston, the kind of chill that seeps beneath your coat and lingers in your bones. The church smelled of lilies and damp timber. Wooden pews groaned under the weight of family, friends, and colleagues who had gathered to honor my father's memory. Charles Miller, my father, was a man of great standing. In both law and business, his name commanded respect. He had built his empire from the ground up. Though strict, he was admired. I sat in the front row, fingers interlocked, forcing myself to breathe evenly. My mother dabbed her eyes beside me. My younger sister, Claire, stared blankly ahead, drowning in grief. And on the very edge of the pew, her back straight, her face unreadable, sat my wife Emily. That morning, Emily looked flawless, black dress, pearl earrings, hair pinned neatly in a bun. But there was something unsettling in her composure. Even before everything came crashing down, she hadn't shed a single tear. Her expression was cold, almost as if she were waiting for time to pass, not mourning a loss. When the service ended and mourners began filing out, Emily placed a hand lightly on my arm. "Jonathan," she said softly but firmly, "we need to step outside." Believing she wanted to console me in private, I followed her out into the brisk air. The breeze carried the faint scent of burning leaves from a nearby yard. We walked a few paces away from the crowd, stopping near the church wall. She handed me an envelope. I frowned, puzzled. "What's this?" "Open it," she replied, voice flat. My fingers shook as I tore it open. Inside, the words cut like knives. "Petition for dissolution of marriage. Emily Miller versus Jonathan Miller. Filed. Signed. Stamped. You're divorcing me?" My voice cracked louder than I intended. A few heads turned. Emily didn't flinch. "Yes," she said evenly. "And I want you to understand something." Her gaze locked with mine, sharp enough to make me recoil. "Your father's wealth, legally, it belongs to me now." The words gutted me. My father's will hadn't even been read, but Emily was a corporate lawyer, brilliant, ruthless, always ahead of everyone else. She had reviewed every clause, every trust, every loophole. She had planned this moment with surgical precision. Grief for my father collided with fury and disbelief. The woman who had shared my life, my secrets, my dreams, had chosen this exact moment, when I was most broken, to strike. "Emily, why here? Why now?" My voice was ragged. "Because timing is everything, Jonathan." Her lips curled somewhere between a smirk and indifference. "And because this isn't just about us. It's about legacy. I refuse to be left with scraps." My chest tightened. Memories surged. Her expensive tastes, her late nights at work, her disdain for my family traditions. Signs I had ignored. Behind us, church bells tolled. People moved past with flowers and whispers, unaware that my world had collapsed in silence. I wanted to shout, to tear those papers apart, to fling them into the wind. But my father's coffin was being carried to the hearse, and my mother's sobs echoed inside the church. I couldn't add more chaos to a day already shattered. So I stood frozen, divorce papers in one hand, my wife's cold stare in the other. "Don't cause a scene," she murmured, almost reading my thoughts. "It won't change anything." Then she turned, heels clicking against the pavement, and walked back with the poise of someone who had already claimed victory. I stood there, numb, watching her disappear into the crowd as the sky pressed down, gray and merciless. That day, I buried my father. But I also buried the illusion of the marriage I thought I had. I remembered how it had all begun, with passion and promise, only to unravel into warning signs I refused to acknowledge. 13 years ago, I met Emily in New York. I was 30, just starting my career as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm. She was 27, a corporate attorney with a sharp reputation and an intensity that filled any room. We were introduced at a mutual friend's dinner party in Manhattan. I still remember her laugh, bold, confident, a rhythm that hooked me before I even realized it. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who made you straighten your back and measure your words. I was captivated almost instantly. That night we spoke about everything, our careers, our childhoods, our ambitions. She told me she was raised in Connecticut, daughter of a stern judge and a Yale professor. Her life had been orderly, strict, pre-planned. Mine was different. My father's law firm kept him so occupied that my mother often felt like she raised Claire and me alone. Emily listened intently, her dark eyes studying me like a case to be solved. We fell into a whirlwind romance. She thrived on upscale restaurants, late-night jazz clubs, weekend escapes to the Hamptons. I let myself be swept along, feeling sharper, stronger, as if I mattered more just by being with her. A year later, we married in a white stone church in Connecticut. My father toasted tradition and strength. My mother wept through the vows. Emily stood at the altar radiant, triumphant. The early years felt like a dream. We traveled Paris, Venice, Tokyo. She furnished our Boston condo in sleek modern style. Black leather, glass tables, abstract art I never quite understood. Emily carried herself with elegance, always polished, always commanding attention. But even then, cracks showed. 3 years into the marriage, I came home with takeout. She sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, phone to her ear. When she hung up, she sighed. "You didn't call before buying dinner," she said flatly. I laughed, assuming she was joking. "Since when do I need permission to bring Chinese food?" Her eyes were cold. "Jonathan, it's about being considerate. You can't just assume." I brushed it off, telling myself she was stressed. But it wasn't about food, it was about control. Emily had a way of twisting every disagreement, until I felt guilty for simply existing. If I questioned her spending, I was insecure. If I wanted more time together, I was clingy. If I suggested visiting my parents, she snapped. "So your mother can criticize me again?" I should have recognized the truth much sooner. Blind, stubborn love makes fools of us all. There were tender moments, just enough to keep me tethered. The way she kissed me before an important meeting, whispering, "You've got this." The way she curled against me during winter storms, sipping wine while old films flickered on the screen. Those moments convinced me that behind her steel exterior, there was a softness she reserved only for me. But as the years stretched on, I began to notice her ambition sharpening. She spoke endlessly about financial independence, about never wanting to be defined solely as a wife. I admired that drive, yet something about it unsettled me. She consumed corporate law journals, dissected inheritance cases, and treated estate loopholes like puzzles. When my father invited us to family dinners, she often refused, citing late meetings. My mother grew suspicious. "She's distant," Mom once whispered in the kitchen. I defended Emily, insisting she was simply busy. But in the quiet corners of my mind, I wondered. The turning point came 5 years into our marriage when Emily suggested we establish a joint trust. "It's practical," she said. "If anything happens to you, I won't be left vulnerable." I hesitated, but she was persuasive. In marriage, trust feels like the natural response. I signed wherever she pointed, never realizing those signatures would one day become the chains she used against me. There were smaller betrayals I chose to dismiss. The night she stumbled in at 2 a.m., swearing she was with clients. The weekend she forgot to mention a networking trip to Chicago. The way she locked her phone, guarding it like a treasure chest. I buried my doubts beneath the weight of tradition. My parents had been married 40 years. Divorce wasn't in my vocabulary. I told myself love was meant to be hard, that storms tested commitment. I convinced myself she loved me, even when her words cut like blades. But standing outside that church with divorce papers in my hand, I finally faced the truth. She had been preparing for this all along. The trust, the distance from my family, the control. And I, blinded by devotion, had handed her the very tools she used to undo me. I should have known the day would come when Emily's brilliance as an attorney would stop being my shield and become my downfall. What I didn't anticipate was just how carefully orchestrated her plan truly was. 3 days after the funeral, we gathered at my father's law office in downtown Boston for the reading of his will. My father was meticulous in life, and in death, nothing was left to chance. His longtime partner, Richard Harrington, presided over the meeting. The conference room was solemn, mahogany walls lined with framed degrees and shelves of leather-bound books. Claire sat across from me, pale and tense. Emily, immaculate in a navy suit, sat by my side with a legal pad on her lap, as though she were attending a deposition rather than her husband's family reading. Richard cleared his throat and began. My father's estate was vast: properties, investments, accounts, even the firm itself. He had left smaller bequests: a donation to Harvard Law, a scholarship fund, gifts to loyal employees. Then he reached the core of the inheritance. To my son Jonathan and my daughter Claire, I leave equal shares of my estate, managed under the Miller Family Trust. Relief washed over me. At least in this, my father had been fair. Claire glanced at me, her tired eyes offering a small nod. But then Richard's tone shifted as he read the next clause. Should either heir be legally married at the time of my death, their spouse shall, by right of law and under the trust's conditions, inherit full access and control to the marital share, unless otherwise limited by prenuptial agreement. My heart stopped. The words struck like a blow. Slowly, I turned toward Emily. She didn't flinch. She simply lowered her eyes to the notepad, calmly scribbling notes like a student in class. I remembered then how she had resisted a prenup. My father had urged it, warning me to protect the family legacy. But Emily had been firm. "Jonathan, don't you trust me?" she asked, her voice trembling with practiced hurt. "Are we really going to start our marriage with walls between us?" And I gave in. I hadn't wanted to doubt her. Now her patience had paid off. With that clause, she effectively owned half of everything my father left me. Blood drained from my face. Claire gasped softly, hand covering her mouth. Richard kept reading, oblivious to the storm brewing beside me. When the meeting ended, I cornered Emily in the hallway, my voice low but seething. You knew about that clause." She slipped her notepad into her bag with mechanical ease. "Of course I knew. I reviewed the trust years ago." My hands shook. "And you didn't think to tell me?" She met my eyes, calm and unwavering. "Jonathan, I don't owe you an apology for being prepared. I'm an attorney. This is my job." "This was never about us," I whispered. "You married me for this, didn't you?" For the first time, her mask cracked. Irritation flickered across her face. "Don't be naive. Do you think love alone sustains a marriage? Power, security, control. That's what sustains it. And now I have what I deserve." Her words sliced through me. 11 years of shared memories, the laughter, the kisses, the nights we dreamed of children we never had, suddenly felt like elaborate props in a play I hadn't realized I was trapped inside. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the city skyline. My phone buzzed with condolences, with Claire asking if I was okay, but I couldn't respond. All I saw was Emily's face at the funeral, cold, determined, waiting for the moment I was weakest to strike. I thought of my father, a man who built his empire with iron discipline. How furious he would have been to see the very trust he designed to protect us exploited by the woman I trusted most. Then came the realization that chilled me more than anything. Emily wasn't finished. This was just the beginning. With half my inheritance in her control, she held leverage, power, and every intention of using both. The hidden truth wasn't just that she wanted out of our marriage. She had been waiting for this moment all along. The week after the will was chaos. Word spread quickly through Boston's tight legal and business circles. Emily had secured half of my inheritance. Old colleagues, acquaintances, even distant relatives reached out, their messages dripping with curiosity disguised as sympathy. Some congratulated her, others pitied me. But the whispers cut deepest. Remarks about how I had been outmaneuvered by my own wife. At my father's funeral no less. Claire was livid. She stormed into my apartment one freezing evening, cheeks flushed from the wind and from fury. "Jonathan, how could you let this happen?" she demanded, tossing her coat aside. Exhausted, I rubbed my temples. You think I planned this? She knew about the clause. I didn't. Claire paced the room, arms folded tight. Dad warned you. He begged you to get a prenup. And now Emily sits on half the estate, half of his legacy. Do you know what people are saying? That she played you like a violin, and you let her. Her words stung because they were true. I had ignored every red flag. I had let love, or what I thought was love, blind me. Claire, I said softly. I can't undo the past. She stopped pacing, tears brimming in her eyes. But we can't let her destroy everything Dad built. His name, his reputation. It can't end like this. I promised her I would fight. But deep down, I knew Emily held most of the cards. She wasn't just my wife. She was a strategist who knew every loophole, every angle. The feud couldn't stay hidden. By Thanksgiving, barely a month after the funeral, it erupted. Our extended family gathered at Claire's home in Cambridge. The air was thick with roasted turkey, cinnamon, and bitter resentment. Emily showed up late, draped in a designer coat, and holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Claire's mortgage. She entered with the air of someone who owned the room, and in many ways she did. My mother, usually composed and graceful, couldn't hold back this time. Emily, she said sharply as we gathered at the table. My husband's wealth was meant to secure Jonathan and Claire's future, not pad your bank account. How do you even sleep at night? Emily carefully set down her glass, her tone cool and clipped. With all due respect, Mrs. Miller, I was Jonathan's wife for 11 years. That makes me family. I have every right to what the law grants me. Right. Claire cut in. You cornered him at Dad's funeral. You've humiliated him in public. Don't you dare stand there and pretend this is about family. The room stiffened into silence. Forks scraped plates. My uncle shifted uneasily. My mother shook her head, tears brimming. I wanted to rise to my own defense, to defend my father's name, but Emily's presence drained me. She thrived in conflict, and I shrank in the shadow of it. Later that night, after everyone had left, Claire pulled me aside. If you don't fight her, Jonathan, I will. I'll drag her to court myself if it comes to that. I rested a hand on her shoulder. Be careful. Emily isn't just ruthless, she's deliberate. She never chooses a fight she can't win. Claire's voice quivered with fury. Then maybe it's time she lost one. But even as she said it, I knew Emily was always a few moves ahead. The weeks that followed blurred together. Lawyers, accountants, endless paperwork. Emily froze accounts, citing rights under the marital trust. Notices came through her law firm, cold and impersonal, signed Emily Miller, attorney at law. As if I were just another client on her docket. The betrayal had grown beyond personal. It was systematic, seeping into every part of my life. Friends kept their distance, unsure of where loyalties lay. Business partners hesitated, wary of being caught in the feud. My reputation as Charles Miller's heir, once secure, was now clouded by whispers of weakness, of being undone by my own wife. And still, Emily played her role flawlessly. She attended galas, charity dinners, high society functions, polished, admired, celebrated as the poised widow carrying forward the Miller fortune. The press adored her. Society embraced her. She wasn't just winning in court. She was winning in the public eye. Meanwhile, I spent lonely nights staring at the empty side of the bed, wondering how love had soured into this. Yet beneath the humiliation, something inside me hardened. For the first time, I wasn't just my father's son or Emily's husband. I was a man with nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is dangerous. Choosing to fight her wasn't easy. I had spent months paralyzed, grieving my father, drowning in shame, buckling under public ridicule. But when I saw my mother's weary eyes and Claire's clenched fists, I knew I couldn't remain broken. I hired David Prescott, one of Boston's most ruthless estate litigators. In his 50s, blunt, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for dismantling opponents piece by piece. At our first meeting, I slid Emily's divorce papers across his desk. He skimmed them, then leaned back. Your wife or soon-to-be ex is good. Ruthless but good. Her case hinges entirely on that trust clause. If we don't dig deeper, she'll bleed you dry. What are my chances? I asked quietly. He tapped the papers. Slim, unless we uncover fraud or manipulation. But Jonathan, if you're ready to fight, I'll fight with you. Just know this, she won't back down. I nodded. Neither will I. The battle that followed was brutal. Depositions, hearings, endless chess moves. Emily represented herself most of the time. She stood across from me in tailored suits, her arguments precise and cutting. She was in her element. And for the first time, I didn't see her as my wife, but as the adversary she had always been training to become. In court, she painted herself as the devoted partner who had given up her prime years for me, worthy of her share of the estate. She spoke about partnership, loyalty, sacrifice. Judges listened, swayed by her composure. But David pressed relentlessly. He exposed inconsistencies in her financial records. He highlighted the cruel timing of her divorce filing at my father's funeral. He traced her emails, her sudden business trips, her calendar entries. Slowly, her mask began to fracture. One night, drained after 12 hours of testimony, I sat with Claire in my apartment. She poured me bourbon and studied me. "Do you ever regret marrying her?" she asked softly. I stared into the glass. No. I regret refusing to see who she really was. I regret choosing blindness over truth. But regret doesn't erase 11 years, it only teaches. Claire squeezed my hand. Then maybe you're finally learning. The trial dragged on for months. The press feasted on it. The Miller estate war, they called it. Headlines screamed betrayal, fortune, scandal. Strangers dissected my life over breakfast, debating Emily's smirk or my silence as if they knew us. Then came the turning point. David revealed emails proving Emily had been working with financial advisors 2 years before my father's death, drafting strategies to maximize her inheritance. Plans that mirrored the trust stipulations almost exactly. The courtroom froze as the emails were read aloud. Emily's face remained composed, but I caught it, a flicker of panic in her eyes. The judge ordered a deeper investigation. While the law couldn't strip her of everything, the findings were enough to limit her control over my share of the trust. No longer unchecked, her power was bound by oversight and restrictions. It wasn't the sweeping victory I had dreamed of, but it was enough. Enough to protect my father's legacy. Enough to bring my mother and Claire peace. Enough to remind Emily that even the most calculated strategist can stumble into her own trap. When the verdict was delivered, I stepped out into the crisp spring air. Reporters crowded, microphones thrust forward. "Mr. Miller, any comment?" I paused, then said simply, "Sometimes love blinds us, but truth always finds a way." I walked past the cameras, lighter than I'd felt in years. That night, I visited my father's grave for the first time since the funeral. The air was heavy with lilacs. I placed my hand against the cool stone. "Dad," I whispered, "I'm sorry it took me so long. But I fought for us, for you, for what you built." The wind moved through the trees, and for the first time, I felt peace. Emily would move on. To another case, another carefully chosen life. But I would move on too. Not as her victim, not as a broken heir, but as a man tested by betrayal who found his strength. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real inheritance my father left me.